any changes to NATO where a NATO country gets attacked, but they're not paid enough dues, so the United States doesn't defend them?
Well, I've said that to them. I said, if you're not going to pay, we're not going to defend. I said, if you're not going to pay your bills, we're not going to defend you. And it also went for the attack. But if they got attacked, they said, well, does that mean you won't defend us? I said, are you current or are you delinquent?
Are you going to make that policy, U.S. policy, that the U.S. wouldn't defend NATO countries that don't pay?
Well, I think it's common sense, right? If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them. I got into a lot of heat when I said that. You said, oh, he's violating NATO.
If you're not going to pay, we're not going to defend. Trump just threatened to abandon our NATO allies in the middle of a press conference that sent the stock market into a nosedive. But that wasn't even the craziest part. Wait till you hear what he said about astronauts falling in love in space and the danger up there. Is this really the guy we want handling international relations? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. So Trump went off on this bizarre space rant during his press conference yesterday. I mean, what's more important than discussing the romance potential for stranded astronauts when you're the former president, right?
By the Federal Reserve, like targets involving recessions. Indeed, the Atlanta Federal Reserve said that the United States Q1 GDP is likely to be negative 2.8. Just be very clear, Donald Trump said that on day one, prices would come down. They were coming down anyway under former President Biden. Inflation was going to hit about 2%, which was the target by the Federal Reserve, but potentially negative 3% GDP, again, meaning we're heading into recession, Great Recession, and even potentially depression territory. But Trump saying, just have fun, everybody.
While Americans were freaking out about inflation and international tensions, Trump decided the most pressing issue was whether two astronauts might hook up while stuck on the International Space Station. What's worse, these weren't hypothetical astronauts in some Trump space fantasy. He was talking about real people currently in space dealing with a delayed return mission. You have a man and a woman astronaut up there now for a long period of time, Trump rambled during what was supposed to be a serious press conference. They were supposed to be there for 6 days. Now it's 6 months, and they have these wild hair. Wild hair? That's what our former commander-in-chief focused on? Not the technical challenges or safety concerns, but their hairstyles. But wait, it gets better. Trump then started theorizing about the astronauts possibly falling in love. They may be falling in love. They're up there for a long time. They may not be in love, okay?
Donald Trump just finished up a disastrous press conference in the Oval Office. At the same time, he was crashing our markets.
And you know, the biggest problem I have with NATO, I really, I know the guys very well. They're friends of mine. But if the United States was in trouble and we called them, we said, we got a problem. Do you think they're going to come and protect us? They're supposed to. I'm not so sure. So with Japan, we have a deal, which is a very interesting one. And I love Japan.
Just imagine being those astronauts' families watching this nonsense. Your loved ones are stuck in space during a mission extension, and the former president is treating it like some weird reality dating show. Set in Space Love Island, coming this fall. Trump didn't stop there. He casually mentioned there's danger up there that would be very bad, showing he has absolutely no clue about the actual situation with the Boeing Starliner mission. NASA officials were probably banging their heads against the wall watching this display of scientific ignorance.
Donald Trump during this press conference talked about pulling the United States potentially out of NATO. He didn't use those exact words, but judge for yourself here when Donald Trump was asked. And that's why Donald Trump wants us to join the axis of evil and has already pulled us into it with Putin, North Korea, Belarus, and Hungary. Here, Donald Trump is asked by Peter Doocy if he's considering changes to NATO. Quite literally, NATO has very recently come to the defense of the United States. And that just gives you that Donald Trump's perspective of the world is perfectly aligned with Vladimir Putin's, our enemies.
The timing couldn't have been more ironic. Trump had just signed a proclamation supposedly honoring women. This from a man who's been found liable for sexual assault and has a long history of making degrading comments about women. And his idea of respecting women is speculating about a female astronaut's romantic life during a serious space mission. Classic Trump. What's really telling is how Fox News handled the press conference. They conveniently cut away just before Trump launched into his most damaging comments about NATO. They know when to protect their guy from himself, I guess. The astronaut comments weren't just random Trump weirdness. They reveal a disturbing pattern of treating serious situations with inappropriate humor while actual crises unfold. It's like if your house was on fire and you decided it was the perfect time to workshop your stand-up comedy routine about how flames look like funny hair. And here's the kicker. While Trump was making these space romance jokes, the stock market was literally tanking in real time. The disconnect is mind-blowing. It's like watching someone comment on how pretty the cloud patterns are while a tornado is heading straight for their house.
Donald Trump talks about short-term disruptions, meaning inflation surging, but Donald Trump says this is perfectly normal and farmers will be very happy about all of this inflation.
Our farmers are going to be very happy. And again, there'll be disruption. But in the end, I said it before with China, we signed an unbelievable deal with China, $50 billion in purchases, and we're doing great. There'll always be a little short-term interruption. I don't think it's going to be big, but the countries and companies that have been ripping us aren't particularly happy with what I'm doing.
Trump's bizarre space musings came as investors were panic selling, wiping billions off the market. Real Americans were watching their retirement accounts shrink, while the former president wondered aloud if astronauts might be hooking up in zero gravity. And remember, this wasn't some campaign rally where supporters expect off-the-cuff ramblings. This was an official press conference from the Oval Office, where world leaders and markets hang on every word. Speaking from the same Oval Office where presidents have carefully managed international relations for decades, Trump decided to casually torch America's most important military alliance with 5 simple words. Nope, I would not defend. Imagine being a NATO country bordering Russia and hearing the former, and possibly future, American president basically give Putin a permission slip to cross your border. This wasn't just another Trump gaffe. This was a sitting president announcing he's perfectly fine with abandoning allies during wartime. Let's back up a second. During his disaster press conference, a reporter asked Trump a simple question. Would he defend NATO allies that don't pay their dues? His response should make every military leader and diplomat in the Western world panic. Nope, I would not. Just like that, as casual as telling your friend you won't pick them up from the airport. Except this isn't about a missed ride. It's about potentially abandoning countries to invasion.
Here, Donald Trump is asked about removing the tariffs temporarily on auto regarding Canada and Mexico, but then he also removed other tariffs.
And they came back to me yesterday. They said, could we have some help on the tariffs because of the speed? And I said, look, I'm going to do it, but that's it. Don't come back to me after the second.
But I know yesterday you spoke with the big 3. Did you tell them that no more exemptions were on the way? And what was the reaction?
I told them, that's it. This was a short-term deal.
There's going to be tariffs, I reverse it. There's going to be tariffs, I reverse it. There's going to be tariffs, I reverse it. He's causing havoc to our economy just based on that, and he's declaring economic warfare, if not outright warfare, on our allies.
When Trump got pushback on this nuclear-level diplomatic disaster, he doubled down harder than a blackjack player with a gambling addiction. He claimed it was just common sense not to defend allies who are delinquent in their payments. This orange nightmare clearly doesn't understand how NATO actually works. Countries don't pay dues to the US like it's some protection racket run by the mob. They commit to spending percentages of their own GDP on defense. It's not some membership fee they owe to Club America. Even worse, Trump suggested that our NATO allies wouldn't defend America if we needed help. This is flat out wrong and dangerously ignorant. After the September 11th attacks, NATO immediately invoked Article 5. The collective defense clause stating an attack on one is an attack on all. Our allies stood with us without hesitation. They sent troops to Afghanistan, deployed ships, and patrolled American skies. Many NATO soldiers died fighting alongside Americans, but Trump either doesn't know this basic fact or doesn't care. You know who's probably celebrating Trump's NATO comments with shots of vodka? Vladimir Putin. Weakening NATO has been Putin's dream for decades. When America's president, even a former one, suggests we might abandon our allies, it creates exactly the kind of division Russia has been trying to sow.
Donald Trump signs an executive order saying that he's great for women. Yes, Donald Trump, who's been found liable for sexual assault, who has bragged about grabbing women by their genitals, sexually assaulting them with.
If they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
So, Mr. President, is that a reflection that you think Doge and Elon Musk have been moving too?
There you have President Trump answering questions moments ago in the Oval Office.
And then Donald Trump, who has been friends with Epstein before. Yes, he's saying that he's great for women, and he signs a declaration proclaiming him great for women.
Trump's comments are essentially a gift-wrapped present to the Kremlin. It's like telling the school bully which kids you definitely won't stand up for if he decides to take their lunch money. This NATO betrayal isn't just offensive to our allies. It represents a fundamental threat to the security structure that has maintained relative peace in Europe for over 75 years. NATO was created specifically to prevent another world war, to stand united against aggression. With one careless statement, Trump undermined decades of carefully built trust and security guarantees. The impact was immediate. According to reports, Trump's NATO comments sent shockwaves through diplomatic channels. Emergency meetings were apparently called to discuss what this means for America's reliability as an ally. Imagine being a smaller NATO country on Russia's border, like Estonia or Latvia, hearing that the former US president might let you get invaded if he doesn't think you've paid enough. These allies are probably frantically reassessing their security plans and wondering if America's word means anything anymore.
Two very special proclamations, the first of which is a proclamation that proclaims March 2025 as Women's History Month in honor of all the wonderful women in your administration, all the wonderful women in America.
You've done a lot, and women have done a lot for us, right? This is an honor. We have a wonderful woman here, Maria Bartiromo.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you, Maria.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Two things. That's not about people, that's about contracts where billions and billions of dollars was just thrown out the window. It probably got kickbacks.
The scariest part isn't just what Trump says, it's that both our enemies and allies believe he means exactly what he says about abandoning commitments. When he was president, foreign leaders quickly learned Trump wasn't just making empty threats, and if he returns to office, these NATO comments aren't just words, they're potential policy. From threatening allies to tanking markets, Trump's economic fantasy tour started when he stepped into La La Land while actual economic professionals were sounding alarm bells. As the Atlanta Fed was predicting a GDP nosedive between negative 2.8% and negative 3% recession territory, folks, Trump stood at the podium with his trademark squint and called inflation a short-term interruption that would make farmers very happy. I'm not sure which farmers he's been talking to, but most I know aren't exactly throwing inflation parties.
Trump says the following about his cabinet members, that he and Elon will be watching them closely. Play this clip.
We want them to keep the good people. And so we're going to be watching them, and Elon and the group are going to be watching them. And
Elon Musk have been moving too quickly?
No, I think they've done an amazing job. They've done an amazing job, and look at what they found. I read it the other night in the speech. I mean, they found these things where billions of dollars has been poured down the drain.
Might fall in love. Here, play this clip.
I'm sure that they will see this in space. What is your message?
So we love you, and we're coming up to get you, and you shouldn't have been up there so long.
There'll always be a little short-term interruption. I don't think it's going to be big, but our farmers are going to be very happy, Trump declared with his usual disconnection from reality. Picture this. The orange economic genius is dismissing inflation as a tiny hiccup, while actual economists are frantically waving red flags about a potential recession. It's like watching someone claim their house isn't on fire while the roof is literally collapsing. The absurdity went to another level when you realize the timing. Trump was spouting these economic fairy tales while investors were panic selling in real time. The markets weren't just disagreeing with Trump, they were having a full-blown anxiety attack over his cavalier attitude towards serious economic problems. But why should reality interfere with a good Trump fantasy? His economic plans are about as stable as a Jenga tower in an earthquake. Take his approach to tariffs. It's the economic equivalent of a toddler who can't decide which toy to play with. First, he announces tariffs with great fanfare. Then he reverses them when businesses scream about costs. Then he reinstates them when he remembers his tough guy image needs maintaining. During this same disaster press conference, Trump mysteriously declared that April 2nd would be a very big day for America regarding new tariffs. Ooh, mysterious, and completely terrifying for businesses trying to make actual plans.
The most incompetent president in our history has allowed that to happen to you. But this president won't let it happen. We're going to get them out. We're coming up to get you. I've authorized Elon. I said, can you get them out? I see the woman with the wild hair, good solid head of hair she's got. There's no kidding. There's no games with her hair. But, and you know, there's a danger up there too. They can have...
Other news that just came out as he was doing that press conference, the Congressional Budget Office says Congress can't cut the $880 billion the House budget calls for without taking hundreds of billions from Medicaid.
The flip-flopping isn't just annoying, it creates economic havoc. Companies can't plan inventory, farmers don't know if they'll have foreign markets, and consumers get hit with price increases that appear and disappear faster than Trump's attention span during intelligence briefings. Remember when he said trade wars were easy to win? I guess that's true if you define winning as making everyone miserable while achieving nothing. Meanwhile, in the world where math still matters, the Congressional Budget Office was reporting that Trump's budget would require cutting a staggering $880 billion, with massive slashes to Medicaid. So while he's casually dismissing inflation as no biggie, his actual plans would gut healthcare for millions of Americans. But hey, at least those imaginary happy farmers will have their inflation party to look forward to. The disconnect between Trump's economic fantasy world and harsh reality couldn't be more stark. When he talks about the economy, it's like listening to someone describe a movie they fell asleep watching, vaguely familiar with the plot but making up most of the details. The problem is, his economic fiction has real-world consequences for actual Americans.
And then a federal judge moments ago just issued an order. Federal Judge Beryl Howell says the following in her order, ordering the reinstatement of National Labor Relations Board member, albeit an energetic one, to take care of effectuating his enumerated duties, including the laws enacted by Congress and interpreted by the judiciary. Perhaps as his vision of effective leadership fundamentally misapprehends the role of Article 2 of the Constitution. In our constitutional order, the president is tasked to be a conscientious custodian.
Are you going to make that policy, U.S. policy, that the U.S. wouldn't defend NATO countries that don't pay?
Well, I think it's common sense, right? If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them. I got into a lot of heat when I said that. You said, oh, he's violating NATO.
The victims of Trumponomics aren't just faceless investors or distant corporations. They're regular people trying to afford groceries, healthcare, and housing. When he dismisses inflation with a wave of his hand, he's ignoring the struggles of families watching their grocery bills climb while their savings shrink. When he flip-flops on tariffs, he's creating chaos for small business owners who can't absorb sudden price changes. And when his budget calls for massive cuts to social services, he's threatening the safety nets that keep vulnerable Americans from falling into poverty. The most infuriating part is the confidence with which he delivers these economic fantasies. Trump speaks about the economy with the authority of someone who has never had to worry about making rent or choosing between medication and food. His economic pronouncements come from a gilded bubble where consequences are for other people. What's truly mind-blowing about this whole disaster isn't just the astronaut fantasies or NATO threats. It's the absolute disconnect between Trump's casual attitude and the serious consequences of his words. As experts have pointed out, we're watching a dangerous trend where entertainment value trumps actual leadership accountability. The most alarming part? This isn't just bad politics. It's a fundamental betrayal of what presidential communication should be. While Trump was busy cracking jokes and signing his "I'm great for women" paperwork, real-world dominoes were falling, markets crashing, allies freaking out, and regular Americans wondering if their president even lives in the same reality they do. This troubling alignment with adversarial perspectives, especially regarding NATO, isn't just embarrassing. It's exactly what America's enemies have been hoping for. Who honestly believes this casual approach to global affairs is anything but a disaster waiting to happen? Not the experts, not our allies, and certainly not the American people watching their future being treated like just another reality TV episode.